where the Harbingers meet together. She is finally here, and she is my favorite character in the game. Quickly to go over her kit, she's a Pyro main DPS character that is based mainly around using her normal attacks. You're heavily incentivized into building attack. Her best in slot weapon is her signature. It also becomes a scythe once you get to a certain point in her kit we'll talk about later. Then also any of these options right here are fairly good, and also deathmatch is pretty good for free to play. You have something like the white tassel. I do not have a white tassel right now, but a white tassel is 20% worse than her signature, which is not bad at all. It is very comparable compared to stats we're seeing on other weapons. For example, deathmatch, it's 8% difference or something like that if I remember right. For now, running her with Glad seems good because you get that normal attack increase as soon as you can. Her sig set is in the game and is this one right here. This will be her best by about less than 10%, which means it is kind of worth getting if you want to completely maximize her, but if you have a good saved up Gladiator set and you can get a nice little 1-to-2 ratio, you're probably going to stick with this. Also, another thing to note, whenever you go and ascend her, she gains crit damage, and her weapon right here gives crit rate. It is the highest base attack in the game, if I remember right. Quickly to go through her kit. You have your normal attacks, they have high good scaling, they have this extra scaler right here, we'll talk about in a second. She performs just a series of 6 attacks in a row, like so. They all do fairly good damage, have good multipliers. Next thing she has is her E. She does that, it is a very generous range of how far it hits, with a 30-second cooldown. And whenever it hits an enemy, it'll apply something called a blood directive on them. Whenever it does, it'll put a big X on them, and then you can go and reap it with a charge stack. And then from there, once you get that charge stack, you'll get an amount of Bond of Life. That Bond of Life will go and allow you to get a bonus from your passive right over here. And that will give you a 40% damage increase. And also makes it so she can only be healed with this ability right here. More on that in just a second. The damage that this does is a dot. It kind of sucks, so I would not really care about it. Its damage is not really the best, and if you're trying to look for it, you don't need a level up at all. Talent priority is normal attacks, Q, and then E, heavily weighted towards normal attacks before anything else at all. Also, as you keep attacking, eventually the stacks that you accrue from her E will decrease. So if I go and find a casual population of Hilichurl somewhere, here, I can show it on Maga Kenki. I killed a lot of things today in order to get her leveled up, so I don't have everything. Once you go and get the stacks and whoops. Also, when you're out of combat, it's actually kind of a cool little thing to mention, you can heal her. So if I go and do this now, she actually will just be able to be healed, which is kind of a nice little feature. Once I go and apply here, that mark gets applied. It'll go, and after it ticks once, it will go and level up to the one you're seeing on screen at C0. Her C2 changes it, so it starts at the second tier. Then from there, see there, you're able to go and infuse it, and as I'm attacking, the buff I have actually decreases. So the more you attack, the less she does, and the more you need to reset it, basically. Now, whenever you go to her Q, what happens is you're gonna go and eat up all the marks you've left on enemies and your remaining blood debt, and then you're gonna go and heal and perform a pretty good damage nuke. I believe the multiplier is 666 at maximum skill level 10, which is pretty darn not bad at all. It has a 15-second cooldown and a 60 energy cost. It also resets your E cooldown. Your E cooldown is 30 seconds. As you saw there, it was a lot shorter than 30 seconds. Whenever you normal attack an enemy, it goes down by 0.0 or 0.8 seconds, meaning you really are just incentivized to just hold down that click button and do a whole bunch of damage for kind of unga bunga type playstyle. It's kind of funny because her kit's an essay to read. From there, for constellations, her C1 gives you interruption resist, and it is really, really good. Also, the value is increased by 100% right here of the Mask of the Red Death. That is really, really good. That just increases the multiplier right here up top. And yeah, that helps out a lot. Makes her do stupidly high damage. Her C1 is, I'd argue, if you don't want to play a Zhongli or Shield or a must-have, and it really is a very valuable thing. Her stopping point is either going to be C2 or C3. Her C3 is pretty darn worth it, but her C2, quickly get to that, goes and makes so whenever you go and collect blood debt, then you go and do a nice little 900% attack nuke. That is a big deal. This also goes and gives you some resistances and also resets your E, as I said earlier. This means you can go, press your E, heal, and then go right back to it, and that will pretty much be a full health heal in most cases. This right here increases the level of normal attack invitation to beheading, which is just for normals, by 3. This is really, really nice because this actually kind of double dips. It increases her actual hit multipliers, and then it'll upgrade this multiplier up here too. This multiplier gets really, really funky at a point, and having more of it just equates to straight up more damage. Quickly, for team synergies, there's a couple things you can do. Her base damage is high enough that you can kind of do whatever you want, really. I do this Farina Yellon Xingqiu comp, or Xingyang comp, but really, it's kind of also incentivized, especially if you're playing on something like mobile and you take a lot more damage, to not run that. Another pretty easy comp that you can run that would be good would be easily dropping out Farina for someone like Zhongli for comfort, and then also instead putting in someone like Bennett, because Bennett will buff you a ton. Usually Bennett always buffs, but it's a bit of a special case in this example because he actually will go and also with the C6 give you some more damage, and attack is really, really what Arlecchino wants, and that is due to this talent right here, where you can just get straight up more damage for your attack, or more resistance rather. So this will then mean she's a bit tankier, and because you can't really heal without her burst, and using her burst takes away your blood debt, means it's usually a DPS loss to use her burst. While it's not the worst thing you can do, and it's a fairly decent nuke even, it's just better to usually normal attack. So this right here, making you a little bit more tankier, is kind of nice. Some copium things you could do is probably put in Deha and then Xingqiu into this team for some extra big resistances. I would not recommend as much. And then you could always also, with the current rise in the teams, you could very well go away with doing something like Chevreuse, Bennett, and then you can either do Fischl, Yaimiko, or Raiden or someone like that who applies a good bit of Electro. And this would actually be a pretty good team as well. This is mainly just because these are 3 characters that do a lot on their own. And then you'd also have Raiden for some energy regeneration. You're having issues with that. I have yet to run into that though with Arlecchino, so I think that most likely you will be fine. If you are though, it's worth noting, Fischl's great free to play option. And really, there's a whole bunch. As an easy comfort team, you could easily do something kind of like this right here. And this will make you plenty tanky, plenty strong. If you really want to, you can switch out Kaza for someone like Bennett, and that works really great. If you're pretty confident that you don't need a shielder, then that's an easy way to switch over to Bennett as well. And all these are going to be fairly competent teams that'll do really good with her. In short, is she going to be better than someone like Farina, or not Farina, sorry, someone like Hu Tao? Well, in a lot of ways, she does kind of a similar role. It's a little bit more brain dead, and you still kind of had the same idea about the kit where you go and you're managing your stacks, in this case your health bar, and you're trying to not die, your burst heals you, and you're constantly trying to play as long as you can without healing. It's very similar to Hu Tao, except for you don't need to do charge attacks in your combos to get more optimal damage. You don't need to time out your dodges as much, and this makes it so Hu Tao can be a little bit more tricky to play than Arlecchino, but Arlecchino very much, especially if you're playing with someone like Farina, has their own set of weaknesses. Overall, I'd say it is worth taking your time, figuring out what teams you like. This is the team I personally like. It's all subjective. Other than that, how much damage do you do? A whole bunch. I've been able to hit close up to 100,000 per charge attacks. The crazy thing about that is this is 20 levels below max, and this should go up by 200 base attack. This number right here should probably be closer to 2,500. Now, just to quickly show it off against Umaga Kenki again, just because, why not? He's a good test subject. Also, here's a good example of her C2's damage really fast. That was with no babe. So obviously sports are going to do a good bit there, but even without refreshing any of my Bond of Life, I was able to very comfortably be able to hit 70,000 damage with her signature weapon being very underleveled. Probably similar more to what you'd see with Black Tassel, if not slightly worse. And yeah, one last thing to note, this turning into a scythe is specifically with her signature. If you go and switch out to another weapon, you will actually just get a ghost scythe, which is also cool because it is a darn ghost scythe, and that by name means it is already pretty cool. As you see here, you see a bit of an outline whenever you attack. So yeah, ghost scythe is pretty cool, but her signature is cooler because then you get a real scythe. I think that's about all there is to note about